Welcome to the scorching arena of valor and the crucible of courage. This is the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Here, in the inferno of life's greatest challenges, heroes are shaped and legends are born. Every episode is a torchlight of wisdom, casting a glow on the paths walked by those who've braved the flames and emerged stronger. In this furnace of fortitude, we'll explore tales of resilience, bravery, and the unyielding human spirit. Each guest brings their own spark of insight, lighting up the darkness and guiding us through the smoke of adversity. With Fireman Rob at the helm, prepared to delve into conversations that smolder with significance and stories that kindle the soul. It's not just a podcast, it's a beacon for all who seek to rise from the ashes and glow with purpose. So stoke the fires of your curiosity and ready your heart for tales of triumph and transformation. The flames are roaring. The stage is ablaze. Welcome to the Forged in the Fires podcast. Let the journey begin.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Today's guest, well, he's better than a newspaper because he's the Daily Explorer. He is a gentleman who has taken life and accentuated it with many of his talents. I'm going to say talents. I'm going to just do that, Ray. I want to introduce you today, Ray Martin. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Rob.
Now, your life experiences, it's interesting because the biggest part of your life experiences didn't happen until later in life. Is that right? Well,
certainly massive changes that I was not expecting, you could say. Yeah, absolutely.
Multiple at one time. I want to dive into that because I think because I want to compare the mindsets.
No problem.
So let's dive into it. 2005 came around, November 2005.
Yeah.
Bring me back to that day. I know it sucks because it's
one of those
things in your life, but it's so powerful that day because it started something new for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably like a lot of people, and some of whom will be listening to this, I've no doubt. When you're growing up as a child, you follow the wisdom and guidance of your parents and the people around you in your social community who say, the secret to happiness is to get a good job, a good partner, a house and a home, have kids, a mortgage, have a couple of holidays a year. There's a kind of default plan for happiness that everyone's meant to follow. And I was following that plan to the letter without questioning it. So I did my studies, I got my exams, got a job, blah, blah, blah. So here I was, 25 years into following that plan, unquestionably, the CEO of a company I founded and very, very successful at it. Won an award in England for being Business Leader of the Year with the Daily Telegraph, and obviously earning a lot of money and having a very affluent lifestyle, etc. And honestly, the truth for me, deep, deep, deep down inside, was I never really felt like that life was the right life for me.
That's crazy.
It sort of felt like, as Bronnie Ware, this is a book I've referenced many times in talks and in my book itself. Bronnie Ware is a hospice nurse in Australia. Mm-hmm. And all she does is talk to people in the last days of their lives. And she says she asks them all the same question. What do you most regret about your life? She's asked that question to well over 1,000 people. And she said, I can tell you exactly. They all say the same 5 things. No different whether they were a millionaire or a janitor or a fireman. It doesn't matter. The number one regret that people have on their deathbed, and this really shocked me when I read it, I wish I'd lived my life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me.
Jeez.
Yeah, this is the number one regret.
It makes sense, though.
Yeah.
And it really makes sense.
It really hit me between the eyes because at the time I read that book, my business partner, who was my wife, had just suddenly and abruptly announced she was leaving the marriage and the company. My father had got very, very ill and was in hospital fighting for his life, and he died shortly afterwards.
Wow.
And so within a 3 or 4 month period, my life as I knew it, this happy, successful CEO, was in tatters. I was in a bomb crater. My wife and I had split up. The company was going to change. My dad had been buried, and my life just didn't look the same. And I read this book and I was thinking, perhaps I'm being literally given a second chance to reset my life and get it on a track which does feel like the life I really want. Perhaps there's a gift in this. Perhaps there is. I wasn't sure, to be honest. And mostly I was just crying myself to sleep every night at how unpleasant and how unhappy I was. But there was also another, what I call the wiser part of me, which is much deeper inside me. When I quietened myself down, that wiser part would speak to me softly and say, this is probably for the best, There's a hidden silver lining type thing, There's something you're going to find out, something you're going to learn.
Right.
And my wisest friend said to me after a while, obviously it was mourning for a while, but after a while they said, why don't you take a 6-month sabbatical? You've been in business for 25 years. You don't need money. You're pretty well stocked. You've got a profitable business. You could easily leave it for 6 months. I thought, yeah, they're right. And so I did. I re-engineered my life, sold my house in London because I was getting divorced, so it was going to be too big.
Yeah. And
decided that when I got back after this 6-month period, I'd buy out a smaller apartment or something and start another business or another company or something like that. And I went away for 6 months with a backpack, never done anything like that in my life before. At age 45, I was when I left. I think I was the oldest backpacker in the world at that stage. But it was for me, I never went to university or did any studies like that. So I never had a gap year like a lot of people do these days.
Yeah.
I went straight into work at 16 and started building my business empire. So I didn't ever have a break. So I had the first time in my life a break for 6 months, plus a purpose to find new insight and a new understanding about why my life had gone wrong and how I needed to change. And so after 6 months, I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat in a Buddhist monastery in Thailand with Buddhist monks.
Wow.
And I came out of there and it was like someone had put their hand inside my head and turned the volume knob from 10 out of 10 down to like 1 out of 10. I was really calm and quiet, and my whole world changed from that 10-day thing. And I thought, I'm not wanting to go back to my life yet. I want to continue this because there's more I want to understand first. And I didn't have any children, Rob, so I didn't have anything that I needed to go back for. And I carried on, and then I suppose you'd call it guidance these days. I got this message that some people needed my help because I'd been to an elephant sanctuary that was looking after rescued elephants, and I'd been to an orphanage in Nepal. So I decided to start a fundraising effort for those things to help them. I thought it'd just be temporary. I'll do this. Yeah. And then I decided to raise money. I was going to run a marathon at age 50. I'd never run in my life. But I got a place to run.
Why not at this point?
Yeah. I got a place to run in the New York Marathon in the Valley.
Really?
Yeah. And so I managed to raise $15,000 from running that marathon.
Wow.
And then I had this war chest of money that I took to the elephant sanctuary and the orphanage. I went back with the money and spent a few weeks at each place getting stuff built and done and spending it and making sure every penny got used properly. And that took another 2 years to do that on top of my 6 months. And then after that, I thought, I like this life. I want to see where it leads. I ended up living out in my backpack for 14 years.
Well,
and I came back to England.
Hopefully you got a new backpack, Ray.
Yeah, I did. I did have to replace it once. But I came back in 2019, much, much later than I ever imagined I would. And it's just created a new life path for me. And then when I returned to England, I wrote and published a book about that 14-year journey. And now I am often talking about what I learned, and I coach people around those things.
I love, there's so much to unpack there because
go ahead.
And now, you like that?
Yeah, it's a short story.
Yeah, because when you look at people who have had those kind of struggles, usually they have one or maybe two, but the volume of struggle that you had to switch your mindset to, I need to take advantage of this.
Yeah,
take me back to that moment, because that's not something that's easy. That's not something that's an easy choice to go, I just lost all of this. Yeah. What do I do now?
Well, it's a really good question. And the best way I can answer it, the inspiration to go for it came from a very short story, a famous story about Gandhi and the boy eating sweets. Have you heard it?
No, I have not. I want to hear this.
Okay, so it's very short. A woman in India has got a 10-year-old boy who's eating too many sweets, and as a concerned mother, she thinks, how do I get him to stop? I know, I'll take him to see Gandhi in Gandhi's ashram, and I'll get Gandhi's to tell him, then he'll definitely stop eating. So she walks sort of 2 or 3 hours in the hot, parched, dry heat of India, across all the sand and fields to Gandhi's ashram, stands in front of him and says, Mr. Gandhi, my boy won't stop eating sweets. Would you please tell him to stop? He looks at the boy. He looks back at her and says, Madam, bring him back in 2 weeks and I'll speak to the boy. And she looks confused, but out of respect, she turns around and goes home. 2 weeks later, she does exactly the same thing, comes back, stands in front of him, and Gandhi looks at the boy and says, boy, I want you to stop eating sweets. It's not good for your health. And the boy says, okay, and he stops. And of course, naturally, she can't resist. She says, Mr. Gandhi, why couldn't you have just said that to the boy 2 weeks ago? And he said, because, madam, 2 weeks ago, I was still eating sweets. And there's a fantastic message in that story, which is for me. Before I left, I was working in the field of leadership coaching, and I was a coach helping other people get through barriers and difficulties and, overcome obstacles in their lives and achieve their visions and dreams for their life. But I hadn't done it for myself.
That's crazy.
And so I
love that.
And so I thought, I've got to go and do this for myself first. If I'm going to have any real power to help others, I have to live through this transformation and shift myself and face all the challenges that come with a massive transition like that. So I'm going to put myself through it and go through the fear and the anxiety and the courage and all the things that are going to come. I'm going to put myself through that and learn from it, which is what I did. That's why I wanted to do it.
And in the first part, like in the first few months, there had to be moments where you go, Ray, what are we doing?
Yeah, there were. Oh my God. Yeah, totally were.
What did you take out of your backpack to make you keep moving forward? Because that's hard.
It's a brilliant question. And I wrote about this because when I got into the journey, what I realized was I'd logistically prepared very, very well. I had some luggage and some stuff, and I'd arranged everything at a practical level so it worked. I shut down everything financially, and it was all under control on the practical and logistical level. But I had done no psychological preparation whatsoever. So most of the time when I was in these paradise settings in Thailand, it was all looked lovely on the surface, but I was feeling anxious. I was feeling scared. I was feeling a lot of guilt and shame for having been a terrible husband whose wife would leave him, things like that. I had a load of feeling going on all the time that was sort of making me want to hide and really uncomfortable. And so I decided after I did the Vipassana meditation retreat, which gave me a lot of light bulbs and a lot of new insight, made me much more aware of how we work as psychological creatures. I decided that I would author a set of 10 guiding principles for myself, which would be my safety rails, that I would follow these 10 guiding principles that I didn't exist when I started. I sat down with a blank sheet of paper. I thought, what would be some good rules for me to follow for the next 6 to 12 months when I'm feeling like this? So, for example, I won't go through them all, it's too long, they're in the book. But, for example, I decided that the principle of presence would be really important. What I mean by that is I noticed, and other people may resonate with this, I noticed that most of the time I'm either living in the future or living in the past. In my own thinking, I mean, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm thinking about all the goals I haven't yet achieved this year. I'm thinking about all the events that are coming. I'm thinking about all the regrets I have from the past. I'm replaying events I wish I could go back and do differently.
Right.
I'm rarely ever in the same room, in my body and in my thinking together, fully present, just being there and paying attention to what's going on.
That's I
thought if I can develop that as a practice, if I can make that a rule, if I can be fully present and take my attention purposefully away from the future or the past, I'm going to start to change the way I see things and think, and my awareness is going to expand enormously, and it's going to really help me make better decisions in the end. That's one example.
It's so true. And in my mind, I'm going, okay, you were super successful before.
Yeah.
most people, like you were, like when you started out talking, you're like, this is what success is. I am success.
Yeah.
How
materially successful, Rob. Materially successful.
Right. But how did that mindset, because realistically, to get to where you were with financially, with a marriage, with even just with being in society, you had a mindset that was considered successful.
Yeah.
How did that successful mindset shift as you went into this new Ray? What was that success? What did that success look like?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because it took 3 or 4 years for that shift and that change to really materialize. Because I think, when I think about it now, if I was to define what happiness, let's say, is,
right.
I'll call it happiness rather than success, because
I like
in the
that
book,
better.
in the book, I was asked by the editors who helped me write the book, could I say what I learned from this entire journey? And so I distilled that into what I call my 6 rules for happiness, which are in the book as well. But one of the things that I think leads to a happy life for most of us is we've got to develop self-awareness. It's one of the 6 rules. You must have access to inner understanding of yourself. Like, you've got to know not just what you think, but why you think the way you do, what beliefs you're holding. You've got to understand your own emotions and what's driving those and what's triggering them on and off.
Right.
You've got to understand what your needs are. The need for belonging, the need for recognition, the need for service, the need for variety, things like this, because they're driving what we're deciding to do without us knowing most of the time.
Right.
And so there's a whole smorgasbord of things which I call self-awareness. You've got to understand what your values are. You know what it's like to work in a place where your values aren't recognized.
Right.
I don't know if you know this. I can't remember his name. I wish I could. But there was a guy who took over as an interim manager at some fire department somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it might be in Canada. His story went viral. And for the first time, they had a guy whose values were amazing. People loved working for him. He sort of knocked the fire service really into shape and got all the inefficiencies out and got everyone working as a team. And when they came to the end of his interim contract, like a maternity leave or something like this, they offered him the job full time, and he said no. And everyone went. All the staff sort of wrote letters to the board saying, we really want that guy to take the full time job. And when they said to him, why couldn't you take the job full time? He said, because this organization doesn't align with my values. I've obviously made these improvements happen, but I could never work here. None of you're all closed, defensive, you're not curious, you're not committed to learning. They didn't subscribe to any of the values that he held as an individual.
How powerful is that, though? I mean, it's the same as you of the values. How hard is it? I think that's one of the things that a lot of people look at is like, yes, I have values, I have these things, but it's so hard to stand up for that in the moment, because you get knocked down or you won't get what you want to do.
Yeah.
What are some of the defining differences that allow you to be able to do that? Because I think people are like, Ray, tell me.
Well, it's a very complex issue in a way,
right?
But in simple terms, we all want to go and do what we do every day and have our own values honored. For most people, that's things like they want to feel trusted, valued, appreciated, understood. They want to feel supported, to grow and learn and develop. They're pretty common, I would say, for most people. But when those values are violated in a specific individual relationship, say with your manager, and he doesn't trust you or doesn't respond to requests or doesn't come back to you when promised or constantly he's missing meetings or something, you start to wonder, you start to question. And then I think we have to take ownership for that. It's not the other person's fault necessarily, but we have to take ownership for it and then go and have a real heart-to-heart conversation with that person saying, I'd really like to talk to you openly and honestly about what I'm experiencing, what's going on. This isn't quite working how I would like it to for me, and I'm sure it's probably similar for you, but can we talk about how our working relationship is happening? And I can see some ways I could possibly bring myself to it in a way that would improve it. And I'd love to just explore that with you openly and look at how we can really enhance the way we're working together so that both get everything we need and we're both happy.
That's
can we have a conversation about that?
right. That's a powerful. What you just said is such a powerful thing. When you talked about you have to take ownership.
You do. It's my second rule of the 6, taking ownership.
So powerful.
Yeah.
And realistically, when you started this journey,
yeah,
how many things did you have? What was the first thing that you took ownership of the situation that happened to you?
Well, I mean,
you remember?
Yeah, I do. You know, these guiding principles sort of born out of it. These 10 principles I was talking about. So the second one was self-acceptance. You know, I had to accept that whilst I had, you know, acted in a way that was, you know, causing some of these events, it wasn't the other person's fault. I wasn't the victim of someone else's decisions. I was co-authoring all the circumstances that had led to that inevitable outcome.
Right.
When I look back at it, I thought, God, I played my part in that. I can see where I made choices that really didn't work for me or the relationship.
Right.
And so I own that. And so now the question is, what do I want to do? Do I want to improve and change and grow and not do that again? Or do I just want to repeat the same thing over and over? So, of course, I decided the first one is best.
Right.
And so I put myself into a much more learning frame and a learning mindset. And the principle of self-acceptance was to say to myself regularly, you're not a crappy person, Ray. You are someone who's made the best choices with what they knew at the time. And now you've got a chance to learn and grow and you're going to improve and you're on the path towards improvement. So just keep encouraging yourself. I changed my inner voice. I changed my inner voice in my I've been such a strong critic of myself. Like every day I'd wake up. This is true. And I'd be going, terrible. You're such an arsehole, Ray. What? You should never have done that. And, you know, I used to say to people, you'll laugh when I say this, but I used to say to people, if that voice in my head had been an actual person like you and you were living with me in the house and you spoke to me like that, I'd have to say, Rob, get the hell out of here. You can't live here anymore. I'm not having you speak to me like that. There's no way I would tolerate that.
No. It is crazy the amount of internal conversation, because I want to bring up, you know, you talk about the company and the marriage, but you also had your dad at that time pass away. Like that adds a whole different aspect. My dad passed of cancer in 2019, and there's a lot of turmoil that goes on in your head. How did you deal with that at the same time? Because that loss, the unexplainability, or, you know, my dad passed of cancer and you can explain it, but you can't really tangibly put it into your mind. Like, I can't ask a question again. I can't go to him for advice. I can't see him. How did you process that too?
Yeah. It's a good question, because my dad was ill for a long, long time. So we had lots of time in the family to get ready, and it was inevitable. It was even his own. He was 73 when he died, and he was frail and had lost all his quality of life. So even if he'd lived, he would have had to have been helped all the time. So he just didn't want to live like that, basically. So he just decided he'd had enough, you know. And so it was I actually quite admired his courage in making that decision to choose his own exit point. And so we were really very accepting of that, because it was a very courageous and kind of, it's just like my dad to decide he wanted to live his own way, and that was it. And
did that help you? Did that help you then?
It did. You know, so I was quite at peace when he passed, because it was coming for months, almost a year.
Okay.
And so I was ready. And then the second thing was, my dad was not someone who I relied on for advice or guidance, because he was was a working man his whole life, and I worked in a completely different world to the one he grew up in, and he was not someone I relied on at all for any of those things, and certainly not financially. So none of those things impacted me really.
That's it. So that's interesting, because did a lot of that stuff from your dad, like, did it help you as you're going on this backpacking journey to kind of go, no, I don't want to have that. I want to be this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things my dad had always said to me, because my dad was such a youthful spirit, you know, one of his joys was to travel a lot. He loved
Okay.
taking any money he had and going off traveling. He went on cargo ships. He went all over the world where he could afford it. He was a working class guy, so he didn't have loads of money, but he loved to spend it on travel. And so he always used to say to me when I was running a business and working 24/7, and he was just say, Ray, when are you ever going to get some time to go and see the world and travel? You're such an idiot doing all this work. You don't need to do it. You know, what you've got enough. You know, why don't you go and do some traveling? I used to say, no, Dad, we're building the business. We're doing this. We've got this target. We've got this goal, you know, blah, blah. And he just used to bang on about it quite naively and say, you should go traveling. You should go traveling. And weirdly enough, you know, the book I referred to, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Yeah.
The Bronnie Ware book. The second biggest regret that everyone had on their deathbed, I wished I hadn't worked so hard, because when they died, they had loads of money in the bank that they never spent.
That they never did anything with.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the second biggest regret. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. So when my dad died, it really made, and my life was falling apart already.
Yeah.
I thought, do I need to work this hard for the rest of my life? I'm 45. I've got 20 more years of work. Do I need to work this hard? What if I change things up a lot? And what if I found a completely different mix in life? And so I decided, as a result of being on this journey and doing the meditations, I made one big decision, which is I was never going to own and operate a company again, because that involves employing people and paying salaries and stuff. I made the decision that from now on, I was going to work as a freelance coach, as an individual freelance.
Yeah.
And just get paid for working with clients.
Perfect.
I knew I'd earn less of the fees, but it gave me a way of being that much more suited what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And I would say I'm much and I still am. 20 years later, I'm a freelance coach, and I'm so happy doing it. And I'm so free, you know.
I can't tell, Ray. I can't tell.
So I'm actually much happier on, you know, obviously much lower income than when I was a CEO of a company.
Right.
But I've got enough for what I need from life, so I'm happy with that. So
that's such a powerful statement. I have enough of what I need from life.
Yeah.
When people look at their lives, you know, a lot of people will go, well, he had this huge thing that, you know, kind of triggered him into going into this thing. How can somebody who doesn't have a big event like that change their trajectory to find that happiness like you were talking about? What's something that they can do? Because a lot of times I always call them impact moments. You have to have that impact moment to truly understand what your passion is and what your purpose is. But how can you reflect on your own life without going to a temple?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, sadly, I think we are creatures of habit, humans, and we often need a shock to jolt us out of unwanted routines and patterns, which we won't give up. There's got to be more pain, in other words, to tip you over, I think, you know. Yeah. There's always a tipping point with these things. But what I can say to anyone listening, and this is 100% true, which is you don't need to go on a 14-year backpacking journey. You don't even need to leave your country or your hometown. You don't even need to go out of your house. What's most critical in the whole journey is you do need to examine the way you think and the way your thinking machinery works, because that's the root of the changes. You have to start changing how you think about what you think.
Oh, I love that.
That's where the change is. And then so what I found was when I went to Asia and lived in a very different culture where people are culturally very different in their manner, and there's a lot more smiling and happiness, and it's a lot more relaxed way of life. I found I started to think differently because I was in an environment that was different. When I was in London and I was struggling and stuck, I couldn't move because everyone thought the same as me. I mean, they were just all hung up in the same way. Yeah. So I knew I wasn't going to find any new insight where I was. So I needed to surround myself just for a while, with some different ways. People have thought different ways, but you don't need to leave the country. There are groups, meetups, clubs, societies, gatherings. There's lots of things going on locally where you are, where you get that kind of different thinking.
Right. I love that. Make sure you go to lifewithoutatie.com. You can find out about his book, your podcast as well. You can find how to just connect with Ray. That's the best part about it. Ray, I always end my podcast the same way with 3 questions. Are you ready, sir?
Yep, ready.
All right. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself one piece of advice, what's that going to be?
It would definitely be just really pay attention energetically to what your soul wants from your life. Yeah.
I love it.
And stay true to yourself. Yeah.
There's that. How's that? So if, everybody's going through challenges and struggles in their life in some way, shape, or form. If you could give people 2 tips, 2 things that they can incorporate into their daily life to continue to move forward, to continue to push life, what would those 2 things be?
Yeah, the first would definitely be some self-compassion. It's okay to not be okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You are totally normal if you have a really crappy day when you beat yourself up and you think it's really like the lowest you could ever get. That's really all right to feel like that. Don't even need to try and change it. It's going to pass. So that's
I
one.
love that.
What would the second be? The second would be, reach out and ask people for help, guidance, advice. Don't be afraid to do that. There's loads of collective wisdom you can tap into.
I love that. This last one's fun.
Yeah.
So if you could have coffee at a firehouse table, so in other words, no questions off the table, they're all going to be answered with 3 individuals. They can be deceased or alive. Who are these 3 people going to be?
Well, one of them would be Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Zen Buddhist monk who died 2 or 3 years ago. I had the pleasure of being with him when he was alive.
Wow.
But I would love to
so cool.
sit with him again. I think the other 2, I really like guys like Simon Sinek and Jordan Peterson, the current sort of leading edge thinkers in our society. So either of those would be good picks. And then maybe, someone who was a great artistic contributor to the 21st century, like John Lennon or someone like that.
Oh,
I don't know. It's very hard to pick.
I like the group. Right?
Yeah.
Well, make sure you go to lifewithoutatie.com. Ray, it's been such an honor to have you on and keep that journey going.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, folks, we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. And please share this episode with a friend or family member. To find out more about Fireman Rob, or if you have a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.